Hello, and welcome to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I'm Dr. Jaime G. Raygoza, a life coach, psychologist, and your host. Join me on a journey to inspire and transform ordinary lives into something special. Here, we celebrate the unicorns, those who choose not to follow the ordinary conventional path, but rather chase after their dreams and choose the path less taken, making them truly unique. Together, we'll explore powerful life coaching techniques and hear from special guests who embody the spirit of unicorns in their own way. What are we waiting for? Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finding the Unicorn in You. Today, I have an individual who dedicated his entire professional career either advising executives, entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and entertainers, or as a C-level executive for various firms and partnerships. Across his 35 plus years of professional career, he has coached and mentored scores of colleagues and clients on change, growth, and enrichment of their personal and professional lives. His book, The Delta Theorem, launched in 2023 as a #1 hot new release in business coaching and mentoring on Amazon. I'll let him share a little bit more about this and himself. So without further ado, welcome Bret Magpiong.
So great to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course, it's a pleasure. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what led you to get into this field?
Yeah, so I'm a native Southern Californian. Grew up in a suburb of Los Angeles, got married 32 years ago. I have a 25-year-old daughter. My career, as you alluded to, has been in really the wealth management space, but a very unique niche in the wealth management space. Namely, I was working with a number of people that were like the less than 1%ers, if you will, that lots of ultra high net worth. And in the course of that, I learned a lot of things about them, about life, about things in general, and saw it in my own life. And so I retired 2 years ago from that. And it was not really a true retirement because it launched me into what I'll call the third part of my life, which is giving back and being a coach and consulting with people. So yeah, that's where I am these days.
Perfect. And I know you worked with a lot of individuals, like advising them, coaching, consulting. Why go into that route of helping other individuals?
Yeah, look, we're made for relationship. We in our country get that wrong sometimes in that we're so independent minded and we're fiercely independent. But the reality is that we are made to be in relationship, and giving back to somebody else, either advising them or being able to share some, whether it be technical skills or just life skills with anyone. There's no greater joy than that. Look, I didn't start out my career thinking that I was going to have an answer like that. I started out my career like all of us, trying to figure out what I was going to do. But in the course of it, I realized that things like relationships with people and what they value and what I value was really where the juice was. That's how I got into this.
Perfect. And was there a defining point, if you really think back, where you were like, wow, this is my gift. This is a good niche that I'm doing here, and I want to pursue this?
Yeah, look, I don't know if there's a defining inflection point per se. One of the things that I talk about in my book is this whole area of passion, which is an interesting area because when you go to anywhere and they say follow your passion, and that's all probably true, but it also can be a little bit dangerous inside of stuff. I have a passion for golf, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I should try to become a professional golfer when my handicap is 30 or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's that. What I mostly say is cultivate your passion, right? Find that thing that really makes you come alive and cultivate that. So for me, inflection points were just on the road to cultivating passion, finding something that made me tick a little bit. For instance, yes, I served one-on-one with many clients, but I also found that I enjoyed leading groups of people. And so the last part of my career was actually running a very prestigious firm and being able to motivate younger people and have them figure out what made them come alive. And so it wasn't, as I said, an inflection point, but just the process of cultivating over a long process, if you will.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm curious, why the title Delta Theorem? How did that come about?
Okay, you asked, so here we go. Okay, you ready? Put on your seatbelt because this is what this is all about. Yeah, it's a very interesting title because people can look at it and they say, well, wait, what is this? Is it some kind of an engineering theorem or what have you? It's not. okay? It's a little bit of a shtick, and here's the shtick part of it. The delta theorem is actually a equation that looks like a math equation, okay? And it looks like this: alpha over p cubed by e f squared equals delta. Okay, that's the delta theorem when you look at it as a shtick. Here's what it means. Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. So what it is intended to represent inside this framework for living is your primary purpose, your one thing, the thing that makes you come alive, your powerful why. Okay, it's what the Japanese call an ikigai. It's your reason for being, which is a very big concept, as we all know. And because it's such a big concept, I realize that you probably don't start with what your purpose is, meaning trying to have somebody answer their question, what's your purpose? Oftentimes people say, I have no idea. It's too big of a question. And by the way, if I tell you what it is, does that mean it can never change? So they don't like that notion of losing optionality. But instead, what this is that it sits on top of p cubed as its foundation. And what p cubed stands for is a person's priorities, their principles, and their passion. So if I were to ask you, listen, what are your priorities? What's the most important thing to you right now? Depending on your life stage, maybe you're younger, you are not married, or you are married. You have kids, you don't have kids. You have a career, you don't have a career. You're in school, you're studying. All these various things are definitely those most important areas and life stages of life that you can identify at this point in time. That's your priorities. If I asked you, what do you stand for? What are the things that are non-negotiables in your life? We all have non-negotiables. We maybe don't state them all the time, but the reality is that we have some non-negotiables. I like to think that one of my non-negotiables is let my yes be yes and my no be no. I want my word to matter. I want it to be that when I tell somebody, yes, I'll do that, I'll follow through. And sometimes I'll say, no, I can't do that. And it's just as valid of a situation. Nothing worse than saying yes and delivering a no, right? So that is something that I stand for amongst the many things. I can be, thou shalt not steal as a standard kind of thing. So people's principles are these foundational things that they have. And then finally, if I ask, what just makes you come alive? What do you just love to do? The things that whenever you find yourself in that situation, you need to do it. I need to lead. I need to take the bull by the horns. I need to step back and follow the things that make you really passionate about stuff, right? What I found was that when I looked at those three areas of my own life and also in my clients' lives, that when I intersected my priorities, my principles, and my passion, right in the middle where those intersect is where purpose starts to reveal itself, right? So the concept here is your alpha or your primary purpose sits on top of a firm foundation of your priorities, your principles, and your passion. And because priorities can change, and they often do because life changes happen to us. I happen to be retired right now. And so therefore my priorities have changed a little bit. I have a 25-year-old daughter who's just starting her career. Her priorities are very different than mine. But because priorities change, guess what else can change? Your purpose at any point in time, right? And so this whole notion of optionality being taken off the table is alleviated from the fact that the foundation includes an element that can change over time, right? So that's that part of this quote equation. It's not math at all. It's just a shtick, if you will. It's a way for people to remember those things that help them come up with, I'm really looking for my purpose. How do I find it? Look at your priorities, your principles, and your passion, right? But here's the deal. we all have been in a situation where we come up with something that we love about ourselves, a mission statement, a value statement, these kinds of things we're told we should come up with these kinds of things. And then we write them in calligraphy. We stick them behind a piece of glass and stick it on our desk. And we look at it every day. And guess what? Nothing happens with it unless you activate it, unless you take action. So I can tell you that my purpose these days is to inspire people to come alive, but it will do nothing unless I get on a podcast with you and try to activate that particular purpose. And so it was alpha over P cubed by E, which is meant to represent effort. You got to do the work. You got to put in the effort. You got to make things get activated. And then finally, what I learned was that inside of any time that we put effort in, what looms over the top often is failure. When we take a chance, when we risk, when we put ourselves out there, when we do anything, the chances that you may fail are there. They're not greater or lesser. They're just there. And so it's alpha over P cubed by E F squared. And F stands for failure. This is the only place where math actually comes into this shtick theorem, because usually we look at failure as negatives in our lives. But what happens when you square a negative? It becomes a positive in math. I don't get it. I don't understand it. -2 times -2 is +4? What? How's that possible? I don't get it. But that's just the way that math is. Guess what? When you square up your failures by learning from them, you can turn what looks like a negative into a positive. And so if you look at all those things, I'm looking for my purpose. I identify my priorities, my principles, my passion. I supercharge it by effort, and then I learn from my failure. All of that equals delta, and delta is a symbol for change. I wrote and put my efforts into the delta theorem because I believe that all of us want to have meaning, impact, be difference makers, and effectuate change. And I wanted to see, like, how could I, like in my own life, figure out a way that was not proven like guaranteed. Doesn't guarantee that you're going to create difference. It puts you in a really good position by going through all of these elements to effectuate change, to make a difference, to what I say, come alive. Because I believe that once you go through this, you're going to come alive. You're going to find what it is that you just dig, what you love, what you want, what makes you just tick and that kind of stuff. And so that's what the Delta Theorem is all about. It's a little bit of a shtick. My publisher did not like the title because they thought, you're not going to appeal to anyone that's outside of the engineering world. And I said, it doesn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, if I can tell people what this is all about, they'll get it. They'll understand it. They'll see it. And in the hands of a coach, in the hands of a parent, in the hands of a teacher, to be able to walk people through this stuff is extraordinarily valuable in people's lives.
I love that. And it can be applied to any industry, really, because this is something that is experienced by most people. Like,
Absolutely.
and I really like that you're focusing on the change aspect, because a lot of the stuff that's out there right now is create a 5-year plan, create a 3-year plan. You need to vision board everything, set your goals out there. But the one thing that they fail to put into the equation is change.
Yeah.
Things can just your life can turn upside down within a second. What happened to so many of us that had all these goals, and then the pandemic hit? We were on a 3-year hold where everything was like out of whack. What was normal is no longer normal. And for some people, it created this huge anxiety and depression, because they're like, I don't know how am I going to move forward anymore, because my 5-year plan just got thrown out of in a loop. But you have to be able to adapt to change.
That's right.
If you fail to adapt to change, you're going to get lost. Your purpose is going to get thrown out the window. You have to put that in the equation.
You're gonna be squaring up a lot of failures, right?
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, or not doing anything at all. One of the things that I love about failing, frankly, that sounds strange to say you love failing, is that you want to never fail, then never risk. But you never want to live, then don't risk, right? Risk and life go together. And so does risk and failure, right? You got to take chances here. Now, you're going to take prudent chances. Look, all the stuff that I laid out there, that's intended to give us wisdom around what really makes us who we are. They're your priorities. They're not my priorities for you. They're your priorities. Oftentimes, I'm sure you find this the case in your profession. You ask somebody, like, tell me what's most important to you, and they're going to give you an answer that they think that you want them to say, or that was told to them that this is the way that they should be. And the really good coach is, wait, really? That's what really your priorities are? Or is that somebody else's priorities for you? And so these elements are, they're core. They're not unique. They're core. But coming up with those things to put us in a position to where we can take prudent risk and effectuate change that is unique to our lives, right? To our lives. Let me tell you a story if you don't mind. I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, but if you don't mind. When I graduated college, it was many years ago. And one of the things that I was able to do was to get a backpack, a sleeping bag, a Eurail pass, and a hitchhiker's thumb, and went to Europe before I started working. I had a job lined up. By the way, I didn't have 2 nickels to my name. I just scraped together whatever I could. And that's why I had the backpack and the sleeping bag, because I'll sleep wherever I can. I sleep on a train if I needed to. Any event, one of the things that I was able to do was to travel into Florence, Italy. And I'm not a big art person, meaning it's not that I don't like art. It's just I'm more of a sports person. But when you're in Rome or when you're in Florence, you do that kind of thing. And so I went to this museum, and I went in this museum, and there was a hallway. The way it was curated, years later, I realized this, but the way it was curated was like this. Along this hallway were 4 unfinished statue works of Michelangelo. And what that means is that they were 4 blocks of marble that he had started on, but had never finished. In one, there was an arm, and it was the perfect arm, but the rest of it was all block marble. And another one was like half a torso. Another one was the top of a person's body and that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, look at how perfect that arm is. And yet it's in this block of marble. It turns out that these are called the prisoners. Great terminology for these, because they truly look like human beings trying to escape their marble prison. The way that it was set up was that you turn a corner, and at the end of this other hallway is the statue of the David. And many of us know the David as the most amazing statue that's ever been built. That it's just incredible. 14 feet tall, massive, absolutely beautiful. It takes your breath away. I'm not an art person. I was breathless, truly standing at the foot of the David. Here's what I realized years later, that this is a really good example of our lives. We start off as these blocks of marble, and we're trapped inside there. And we have parents, and we have teachers, and we have coaches that come along, and they help chip away to help us to come out, right? And then we have to struggle to get out as well. But when we come out of that marble, the glory that can be us, our unique us, is the David, right? Our unique thing. That's what you talk about, the unicorn kind of thing. That's what we're talking about here. This beautiful essence of who we are. When I wrote the Delta Theorem, I thought about, how can I help people become that David for themselves? It's a chisel. It's a tool to help to shave away some of the things that are holding us back, if you will, that we're prisoners to. Here's the other thing that's really interesting about this is that unfortunately, oftentimes we think that the marble that we're made of is flawed, or that the chip that made our nose is a little bit off. You know what I'm saying? Like we hold ourselves back and we're willing to hide from becoming that David that we're meant to be. And look, I think you're in the business and I'm in the business of helping people become Davids. And I hope that your listeners would be like, yeah, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to come alive and be like who I'm meant to be for this world.
I completely love that. I really love that analogy, and it really puts things into perspective. To add on to what you're saying, I remember reading a book. I forget what book it was, but there was a prisoner, and all they were given was bread and water, and they were in this prison, and they were not necessarily because they did something bad, but they were more kidnapped and thrown into this prison. So the person was innovative, and they used the bread as a sponge, and they would put it in the water, and then slowly they would use it to drip on the cement. Even though it, for most of us, we're like, that's a very futile thing to do. But after days, months of them doing that, the cement started breaking off,
Mm,
and they were able to actually push the wall open and escape.
I love
So
that.
I want to put that into your analogy. We're given sometimes very few little tools, and depending on how we choose to use them and utilize them and be creative with them, if we're stuck inside that block, you can use these two things that were given to you to help you escape. So you have to really see what tools are given to you and then be open to what people outside of the block are trying to give you in order for you to be able to create the shape and really fulfill the purpose that you are.
I love that. That is so good. I love that. Thank you for that. That is really great.
Yeah, it just like I just thinking about this as you were telling me, and I was just like, wow, it's just such a beautiful analogy. And I agree with you 1,000%. We need to be able to really define what we want and then allow change to help us get there. Don't use it as a adversive thing. Use it something to ride with change and go to finally reach what you're meant to do. And I really love that you put this resource out there for people to utilize and to just grab, to really use it. So listeners, I really do want to emphasize, buy the book, really read it, and use it as a tool to get you one step forward wherever you're at right now.
Yeah. Listen, I appreciate that. And I think that one of the things for your listeners to understand is that I gave the just flyover side of the Delta theorem. If you look at each one of those elements, they are so nuanced. They're really nuanced. And that's what I do in the book is address some of those things. So for instance, principles. We've all known people that are so principle minded that they're horrible to be with. They're horrible to be with because they're so principle minded and there's no freedom inside of that. And just exploring that, or even the concept of that truth is relative, for instance. I address that at least. I just address it as saying this is a reality when you're talking about principles. We can't just say, "Oh, just have your principles," when somebody can come along and say, but yeah, but that's good for you. It's not good for me, and that kind of thing. So I address issues like that. I address things like passion. You go to the commencement speeches and it is follow your passion. And that's good. And I get it. But it also can lead you down a path that's not necessarily the way that you want to go, or just acknowledging life stages when it comes to priorities. These are the various things that I unpack in the area of effort. I look at all various ways that we can look at effort and the encouragement and motivation that can come inside there. Yeah, it's very nuanced inside of this framework that I've laid out.
I love that. And just because something I do want to tell the listeners is, whether you're reading the Delta theorem or if you're taking a new course or whatever you're doing to do self-development, don't just read it for the sake of reading it and then put it away. Actually implement things from every chapter. If you find something that you're like, wow, that's a really good piece of advice, highlight it, put the book away, and apply it into your life right away. Because the more you practice a skill, one, the better it gets, and two, it was more likely to stick to your long-term memory. And then go back to the book, read again, apply something new, and keep doing that until you start actually seeing the change you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's a concept of train versus try. Here's what I mean by that. Okay. When we set goals, let's say I want to lose a certain amount of weight, just as that's an easy one that people lay out there. I want to lose a certain amount of weight, right? I'm going to try to lose that kind of weight. The difference when I talk about train and try is train is that I'm going to get up this morning and put my tennis shoes on, right? To go for a walk. And I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow or the next day and the next day and the next day, right? And suddenly that's a training program that leads to the result, right? Suddenly we have these little wins of just walking as opposed to I'm going to lose all this weight and then we quit because it doesn't happen quick enough. No, it's the little areas of life where all the big things happen. And so it's train versus try. The other component of it, and this is key to what we've been talking about, is it's about the who, not the do, are the things that we jump into to just make it just do things like get up and put our shoes on and go for a walk. But if it starts with the who, meaning who do I see myself as? Who do I want to be? I want to be somebody that walks my daughter down the aisle when she gets married at someday. In order for me to do that, whenever that is, I'm going to have to be healthy enough to be able to do it. In order to be healthy, I better put on my tennis shoes and to walk every single day because sitting on the couch is not likely going to be it. It's about the who, because when we figure out what the who is, we won't quit. We'll stick with it because we'll remember, oh, that's right. That's who I want to be. That's how I want to be seen. That's what I want to do and that kind of stuff. And so the do's end up following the who very easily because it starts with identity and who you are first. And again, tied in with purpose, tied in with all these various things. Look, I know that your audience is younger than I am, I'll say, likely. I wish that somebody had come to me when I was 25, 30, 35 and said, hey, let me walk you through some stuff here. Let's go through some of these things that we can look at your priorities, your principles, and your passion. This isn't going to be an instant fix, but these are going to be things that are going to be part of your marathon, not your sprint. I wish that somebody had done that. That's why I wrote the book. I literally wrote the book because I wanted my daughter, who's 25 years old, to actually have something that she could like fashion for her life to learn things that I had to learn the hard way. And so I wrote the book, not specifically for her, but definitely for her and for others to learn from some of the things that I had learned throughout my life and career.
I completely love that. And you're leaving your legacy for them so that even knocking on wood, one day that you're not here, you're still there. You're still teaching people even afterwards.
That's right. Look, your podcasts are still going to be here, right? People can refer back to podcasts that you've done, this one, any of the others that you've done that can learn back or go back and learn from these things. It's extraordinarily valuable. And again, we started this with like, why helping people? Well, because that's what brings joy, right? That's not just legacy. Like, look at all the stuff we left behind, but look at what you can do to learn from some of the things that we went through on our own. Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. And I've heard of a concept and I want to get your opinion on it. And it goes with what you were saying earlier. And the concept is you have to start acting and building a relationship with your future self. So what you do now is going to affect your future self. So before you do any action, you need to ask yourself, what I'm about to do, is it going to hurt my future self or is it going to benefit my future self? And you need to really, in order for you to actually answer that question, you need to envision what does my future self look like? And going back to your who is the person that I want to be? What is that future self going to look like? And then choosing now, if staying in bed, watching that extra season of whatever going to benefit the person I want to be, or getting up, putting my shoes on, going for a walk going to benefit that person. Make those choices based on creating a relationship that you're going to be proud of in the future for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, part of my professional career and working with these very wealthy people was estate planning. Okay. And estate planning is what's going to happen at your death with all of your assets and stuff. People don't like to talk about it. They don't like to talk about it. Okay. It's like one of the toughest discussions to be had because it makes them think about their mortality, right? That's the deal. But when you think about, let's say, what is going to be said about you in the papers for your obituary or at your memorial service, your eulogy, as this is the person that I was and am out there in the future, is exactly what you're talking about. Believe it or not, you're a little bit of a shtick for me here because in my book, when I'm talking about priorities, I actually have people go through a eulogy exercise. Write your eulogy today. Write it out because it will give you an idea of what it is that you see yourself in the future, just like you described. Let me tell you a story about this is that I had somebody who did this, somebody I was coaching, and they wrote this eulogy, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it said something like he and his wife had multiple generations that had followed in a path that was strong and courageous. They gave back to their community in ways that were greatly beneficial of the community. He volunteered his time after his long, successful career to giving back or whatever the case is. Here's the deal. My client was 24 years old and he was unmarried. None of this stuff was in his life right now, but he saw that as the person that he wanted to be. A grandparent, which means that he had to find a spouse, which means that they had to have kids, which means that they had to have grandchildren. And he talked about his career and what he wanted to do with his career and giving back and that kind of stuff. And then what I was able to do with him is to do a math thing, which is now let's present value your future to today. Are the things that you're doing today going to be compounding such that they compound over time to become that person that you want to be in the future? And when they do, guess what? You're able to figure out, what do I do today? What do I need to do today? Because you have the end in mind at that point in time. So absolutely, it's such a valuable thing. But the thing that's really hard is that people don't like to think about mortality. They don't like to think about it out there in the future. I don't think it's writing your eulogy just because it's called a eulogy at somebody's memorial service doesn't mean that like you should get confused that you're thinking that you're going to die, right? Tomorrow, whatever the case is. Like, no, go through the exercise and do it because it's extraordinarily valuable for where you find yourself today.
I completely love that. And I think I'm going to steal that from you. That is an amazing exercise to do. I think I want to practice it on my own because it really does create a really good picture of who you're going to be or who you want to
Yes.
be. So that way you
Yes.
can start changing those actions today.
Yes, exactly. It's the who, not the do, right? Who do you want to be? And once you find that who, all these decisions that come our way, do I do this? Do I do that? Does it lead to who I want to be? Then it makes it easier. I'm not going to say that you therefore have every decision be able to figure it out. That's not the way life is. Life has changed, as you said, right? And so it's not that it just gives you that, but it helps you to determine those decisions that need to be made here. Is this going to lead me on that path? Is it not going to lead me on that path of who I see myself and who I want to be? So absolutely a valuable tool in your hands.
Yeah, I completely love that. And this kind of goes into my last question, which is becoming a unicorn. I define a unicorn as a person that is comfortable with themselves, they're authentic, and they have a life purpose that they're working towards. In your opinion, what does one have to do to start their unicorn journey?
Look, I do believe it starts with the who once again, right? As my understanding, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. They're unique. They're not two of the same. Is that correct? They're unicorns for a
Yep.
reason. Uni is one,
Mhm.
right? And so if we can determine who we are and who we want to be, it leads us to that place of that unique person that we are and can be. It starts with the who. And so a lot of people don't do the work around what their purpose is or who they are because it's, as I said earlier, it's hard. It feels overwhelming, but little bits at a time, right? Little bits at a time. And you suddenly find that you can determine that who that then will lead to being that unicorn that you're hoping to be. Lately I've been asked, how do you measure success and that kind of thing? And unfortunately, we can get trapped into numbers games of measuring success or bank account balances and that kind of stuff. And I think at the end of the day, as I get older and stuff, for me, it's about my identity. Is this who I want to be? That's how I can identify my success. And if I have one person that's inspired to come alive, which is what my purpose is these days, then that's a success for me. It doesn't matter because it means that I'm living in who I am meant to be. I'm living in who I see myself as. And that's not an arrogant statement. It's meant to be that we all have this unicorn glory inside of us that, if unleashed, is very powerful. A quote that I heard once that transformed my life was this: don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and do that. Because what the world really needs is more people who are fully alive. When you come across somebody that's fully alive, they're infectious. They make you want to come fully alive. And that's what that statement says to me. The world needs people who are really alive, who know who they are, who start with the who follow with their purpose. These kinds of things is what I think is what leads into that unicorn situation.
I completely love that, and I agree with you 1,000%. That was amazing advice. Now we're going towards the end. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much for being on here once
Thank you
again.
for having me. I love it.
So if somebody wants to get in contact with you, asking you questions, or wants to buy your book, how can they do so?
Yeah, I made it relatively easy. I think it's actually very easy. I created a website that is www.connectwithbret.com. Connect with Bret. And Bret is one T. And when you go to that website, there will be links to email addresses and other websites that have more information, and a book website and Amazon and these kinds of things. It makes it very simple that you can get all that information there. It can go directly to Amazon off of there. So Connect with Bret is the easiest place to do it. There's LinkedIn, there's Twitter. It's not called Twitter anymore. X,
Yes.
formerly Twitter. All these various things.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And for listeners, if you go to my website at raygoza-consulting.com, you'll see Bret on the Unicorn Wall of Fame, and all his links will show up there along with a summary of the episode, and it will be on the show notes on this podcast episode. So feel free to just click it and you can just go directly to the website. Bret, thank you so much for all of your wisdom today, and I really appreciate your time. And as a reminder for all listeners, episodes come out every Friday at 7 a.m. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has an amazing day. Thank you for listening to the Finding the Unicorn in You podcast. I truly appreciate you listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and gained valuable insights. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. Until next time, this is Dr. Jaime G. Raygoza signing off.